just abandons this area. They have so much money and they could just do anything with it, but they just choose not to. We have to stand up. We, as children.
What we are just realizing right now from the happenings, or rather from the events of the past 3 days, is that King Mswati can also scare. He appears to be very strong and want to give the semblance that he's a very strong guy who is not scared of anything. But by arresting Xolani and subsequently giving bail to him, we've just seen some areas of weakness, how easily the king can get scared. Because by arresting Xolani, what I realized is that he wanted to test the other camp. He wanted to test how united the pro-democracy groupings are, including the student body, including the student organization and the students who fall under it. He also wanted to test to see whether they have enough motivation to fight for democracy, and he wanted to test their level of commitment to the democratic cause, and he wanted to check if they can mobilize and whether they can have the numbers. He wanted to check whether they are united, to verify whether they are politically united in times of crisis. And what he realized, what he noticed, and what he discovered was that he really thought that these groupings were not very united, or were not united at all, were fighting among themselves. He thought that there were cracks which always showed among the pro-democracy groupings, that they were not very united. But what he realized after arresting Xolani is that by really arresting one of their members, they all rally behind to really defend whoever is arrested. He wanted to check whether they can actually have the numbers, because usually this king accuses the pro-democracy fighters, or let me call them pro-democracy activists, of lacking numbers. He thinks that they are just a minority, Jaka smokers, just a small group. That is exactly the sentiments we are echoed by the daughter, Skanyiso. She thinks, and he thinks, that both of them think very clearly, very quite abnormally. They think that the people who are fighting for democracy are just a small group of people. I don't know where they get that idea. So the king wanted to test and see whether the numbers are really there, whether they do have the numbers. And to his shock, we really realized that this thing was now, it just poked a giant, and the giant was now awakening. People were gathering in all corners of Swaziland. Riots were starting all over. Demonstrations were starting all over again. Reminiscent of the June-July demonstrations which started last year, and then went ahead to cause a lot of havoc for him in terms of governance. So he realized, and he got scared, that if this thing was going to rise up again, and maybe this giant which was just rising, how far is it going to go in its fight against him once it gets started? Once this gathers momentum, how far was it going to go? Is what really scared him. Because once the demonstrations, once the riots gather momentum, sometimes they are difficult to stop. And he got so scared that they ended up giving bail to Xolani. Something that I never expected, because the charges that they leveled against him were not ones to warrant sedition. Really? Then they warrant bail. When you are charged with sedition, usually you are just locked there until maybe you have to go through the court processes until you are proven innocent. Maybe that's when you can be released. That they quickly released him on bail surely is an indication that Mswati himself is not a brave man. He's not strong. He doesn't have a strong nerve. King panicked, and he can't hide away from that fact. He had a panic attack. And the pro-democracy people should capitalize on this. He tested them, he failed, and now he has just exposed himself for who he is. King Mswati doesn't have a heart for the people, that we know for sure. And we know, I actually thought that he was brave enough to stand and defend his own system from whatever demonstrations or riot that can happen. But what I'm realizing now is that if the pro-democracy people launch a serious assault on him in terms of demonstrations and riots, he won't last long, that king, I'm telling you. The kind of fear that he demonstrated right now. Because the pro-democracy grouping, the pro-democracy political parties and organizations really showed that there's unity among them. Mlumi Smakanya issued out a statement that people should start demonstrating and fight last night. He said the injury to one is an injury to all. And Swalimo president had echoed the same sentiments. They were speaking. These are the two biggest political parties in Swaziland. Usually when I talk of politics, I refer to these two. But there are other smaller ones. They were echoing the same sentiment and they were speaking with the same voice. And this scared him that surely he had underestimated their strength. He had always overlooked them. Like he had looked at them like, I mean, he was underestimating his enemy, his opponent. Something which is very, very fatal to do when you are in a fight, like the kind of fight that he always wants to pitch with the pro-democracy organizations. He realized now that if this gets started and these people are as united as they are, and it was of course starting, and you can see from the videos on social media that it was starting. And I don't know how far they will want to take it now that Tolani has been released, because there are those two MPs who are still in prison, how far they are going to want to do it. But he really got scared from this. And I think they should use the same method for everything. He has always underestimated his resolve. Their resolve to fight together, their resolve to really bury their differences and really face the common enemy that they have, which is Mswati. Your enemy, my enemy's enemy is my friend. That's the mantra that they have. As individual political parties, it's natural for them to have some differences here and there. They can't be totally friends because they are contesting for the same seat. But in times like this, where they really need to stick together, they really stick together when it really matters. Like right now, they were sticking together. They are sticking together, which is a beautiful thing to see. Which myself, I wasn't sure was going to happen. And it's a shock for me and for a lot of people that they can stick together like this, speaking with one voice, showing no cracks, no differences at all, which is what I think now that it is possible to bring democracy in Swaziland. It's very easy to bring democracy in Swaziland. And my advice, I don't want this video to be too long, my advice to the pro-democracy activists is that in future when they do their organizations, when they do their management, when they organize for these riots, I think they should form WhatsApp groups so that Mswati doesn't smell or sniff everything that you want to do when you go there on Facebook. There are some things that you should organize without Mswati knowing. Take him by surprise, because the element of surprise is always an element that will give you an advantage. Don't discuss, you discuss only with the people that matter. You now have Swalimo, which has got a lot of members. It has got its grassroots. So I think there are Swalimo members throughout Swaziland. And there are Podemo members throughout Swaziland. Organized through those when you want a serious demonstration. Serious riots, organized with those. You take the king by surprise. This is just a hunch that I have, that sometimes when the king smells everything that you do, sometimes you really can plan to really thwart you and make sure that you don't succeed. And that works against you. Seriously, I applaud, I really admire the kind of unity that you have, the kind of unity that you showed. And you should, now that the battle is only beginning, you should always show this kind of unity, show this kind of tenacity to fight together, to be together, because you are fighting for the same cause. You guys are not different. And Xolani is now out because of your efforts. The king really bowed to your demands because you were speaking with one voice. This is what he was testing. If anyway you to ask for real dialogue, the king is doing all this so that he prepare for a dialogue. He wants to see whether he can have dialogue with you, whether you are worth having dialogue with, whether you are worth any sort. This was a litmus test, an acid test for him, to test whether these pro-democracy people who really want to talk to him are worth it, because he always looks at you, always sees you as a collection of a very small people who smoke dacha together, and who are just a minority who is not worth even listening to. That's how he sees you. Although he might claim that maybe he wants to talk to you, he will be talking to himself, the kind of conversation, the kind of dialogue that he wants to have. He will just be talking to himself. He will be telling you what to do. Now from here, you can push for a real dialogue. I think dialogue is not bad, but don't converse with the king who has got a strong position. Make him weak first, then you talk to him. Maybe he can give concessions, because himself, he doesn't want any dialogue. Push him in a corner. And if we push him in a corner, he might give concessions. And you are powerful enough, you have just demonstrated that you are powerful enough to push that king into a corner, to make him sweat, to make him really buckle under the pressure that you can give him. You can give him maximum pressure that will make him really show how weak he is. And then maybe you can have a conversation, dialogue with him, where you can dictate the terms of what you want, not a dialogue where he'll be sitting on his throne telling you what to do. This is a very good beginning for you. And I have to, before I conclude, thank the students for their resolve, for their perseverance, for their courage, for their bravado. They went through this like it wasn't. It's very frightening to find a king who has all the powers in his hands. But the students, like I say, I am a teacher and I understand students very well. I really admire the way, and I praise you for everything that you have done. And for Xolani, please never stop talking, never stop being vocal. And this could have been part of the king's attempt to silence you. Never go silent again. Never make the king win. If you go silent, the king is going to win. Keep on fighting. There is no democracy in Swaziland. Keep on fighting until you have democracy in Swaziland. Really, it has to be, we have to give credit where it belongs. You really fought a very hard battle, and this is just the beginning. Please don't get tired. Swaziland deserves better. And it can only come, good things can only come through you. Thanks a lot, you students. This is We Africa. Please subscribe to the channel and share with your friends and family.
Anytime you make a move, you must fear that, am I making the right move?